count on you to swap and to change for our YouTube canal. You know where to find us, as we are now also live on YouTube. So I'm going to switch over to our YouTube and welcome everybody. So welcome to this live, as it was supposed to be last week, as you know, but here we are, and not for a non-special reason that we have shifted the live for today, as I have some content to share with you even before we open our office to you. As you know, today's live is about being at your service. So I'm just going to say thank you for all of the Instagram followers, and you can now change and swap the canal into the YouTube. Thank you. So we are not in our office. We are in a different office. Actually, we are in a technical room, and today is raining here in the south of Portugal, where we are now standing, and we are doing a treatment, a water treatment. We did a consultancy project for this client in order to manage two different sources of water that they have here, not only for irrigation, but also for the domestic household usage. Now, and the reason why I'm standing here with an open and a blank sheet for you is so that you can send all of your questions, all of your remarks, or all of your doubts that you may have, that you may encounter in your daily situations and usage regarding water usage, water treatment, you name it. You know what we do, and we are here to help you. And today, now is the moment where you can share your comments, ask your questions, and I'm just going to tell you two or three things about today's subject in order for us to be in the same thought. But of course, all of the other questions that you may have, just bring it across, and if we have time to deal with that, to discuss that, it's our pleasure, and it's therefore that we are here for your service. So without further delay, I was just saying that briefly on Instagram. First of all, today we are celebrating Father's Day in Portugal. I don't know in the rest of the world, but in Portugal, where we are working from, today is a Father's Day. And as father of four beautiful children, I just want to thank God, the universe, universal intelligence, for the opportunity that I have been given to follow their growth. Basically, it's not preaching or doing whatever. It's just basically following their growth, and having the chance to teach them by example is a very big responsibility, and that's what I'm trying to do every day, and I'm trying to be every day a little bit better than yesterday. That's also what we do in our work. So here just going to move around the camera. Sorry for this situation, but I'm going to show you briefly what we're doing here. So we are in a technical room, and in a moment I'm just going to show you what this is all about, and what is the purpose of the treatment that we are installing here. As you can see, a whole bunch of pipes and tanks and pressure vessels, etc. So, and this is the electrical control board. You can see we were just continuing working, so it's just almost finished. And I'll give you later on more details about the finishing of this project. Now, the thing about this project is, I'm just going to change the position of the light. Otherwise, it looks like I'm enlightened, and I'm not enlightened. So I hope you can hear me well. And the reason why we are here is because in this property, we don't have mains water. We don't have city water. So this villa and the property and the irrigation that this property is serving is not served by mains water. Now, they had to find another solution. Now, the initial solution that was going on for the last 15 or 16 years is a borehole. But the borehole here, in some occasions, brings a little bit of brackish water. So the salinity of that borehole is a little bit too high in certain moments of the year, certain periods of the year, especially the drier moments of the year. So we needed to find a solution in order to have a good water quality, not only for the house, because the house has been up to this moment served by a external delivery of water, but we are here to find and to create solutions. So what we do is we have now in our hands the possibility of having surface water, so dam water that is collected and harvested during the rainy season. And this year is a particularly very wet year, so there's abundant water in that case. But we have to bring it up the hill, accommodate that water, and then manage the salinity in order to take the best usage of the borehole water, diluting the salinity with the fresh water coming from the dam. Now, the thing is, rainwater, which is the dam collected water, is rainwater, is also going to be served to do the household and the drinking of this property. Now, the question is that possible? Is that okay? Are we safe with that water? What are the vulnerable points? How can we anticipate contaminations? And how can we deal with that in order to have a safe water for the household? Now, recently, a couple of weeks ago, I have been visiting Venice. Venice has been using for centuries, almost a millennia or more than 1,000 years, that the whole water that they've been using for drinking and also for the household usage, for showering and washing, etc., was rainwater collection. Well, I don't know if you have ever been in Venice. If you don't, well, it's worth visiting for a weekend or a couple of days and explore that. Explore the situation, how you see in all of the squares, you see something like a well, but it's not a well. It's basically an underground cisterna, a tank under the ground. And how can it be that that water can be fresh, not salty, if the whole area of Venice is surrounded by salty canal water, just on that almost surface level? So that's something that I would like to bring up to your awareness and also to your curiosity, so that you can explore that yourself. I'll do some information afterwards to explain how they did it. Okay, for now in Venice they are not using those facilities anymore, and then when you go there you see that those tanks are covered and sealed. But for more than 1,000 years, that city, that community, that empire survived with their own rainwater harvesting, stocking, and using it. Now, what we are doing here is a different concept, is a modern concept of getting surface water that was collected, in this case, was collected in the big dam, but you can compare it in situations where you also harvest and collect your rainwater in a bigger tank, and what to do with that afterwards. So we have to consider that when we are dealing with surface open source water, that openness means also vulnerable. That means that some external contamination can happen, either by negligency or on purpose, or even due to natural phenomena. So imagine that there's like a forest fire around the dam, and then all of the ashes fall into that water. That water is not um, consumable in that sense. So that means that we need to do something with it. So the first thing that we do here is we bring that water up into a tank, and that is the pre-treatment tank. Now that pre-treatment tank is going to serve the two purposes. One is to dilute with the borehole water and have a bigger volume of acceptable water for the irrigation without increasing the salinity level. And on the other hand, we are going to do a series of filtration and purification of that water so that that water can be safe used for the house. And that, of course, has to be attested and verified and certified and analyzed periodically in order to prove and validate that the water is indeed drinkable. So that is where I'm sitting now here. So this is your office at the moment. Basically, it's a technical house that is now your office. So I'm more than glad to attend all of your questions. I'm just going to have a brief look here on my other device to see if there's any issue that is coming across. So two things: drinking water made out of rainwater, is it possible? Yes. Is it difficult? No, not particularly. So that is thank you, Mariana. And that is the case. So we can make it as big, as complex, as complicated as we wish, or as it is needed, according to the needs, the desires, and also the expectations of each project. And that's what we are doing now here. So I'm just now going to bring the camera again to just follow up on you what this process is going to involve, as this is almost finished. So the untreated water will come up through this line, and it will be first filtered so that we can get rid of some debris and sediments. These are the two lines that are going to feed the raw water, the fresh water from the dam into the irrigation tanks. And then this line here that you can see here, this water meter with a cable, that is going to give instructions to this dosing pump to take an anti-scale solution and then feed the water purifier. So the reverse osmosis process that we are going to install here, in order to prevent and expand the life time and the life of the membranes, we are going to install and dilute and dose an anti-scale, an organic anti-scale product that is going to prevent the calcification of the membranes. Okay, because membranes, reverse osmosis membranes, they operate with a membrane, a polyamide membrane that cannot tolerate the saturation of calcium. So if there's calcium coming up with this water, then it's going to clog and block the membranes, and that means that it can reduce the flow production of the equipment. Now, going further, because then that water that is coming out of the purifier is going to be almost pure water, almost distilled water without any minerals. Now, that's also not a good solution on its own. So we are going to have a salinity controller that is going to read the salinity of the water, or the conductivity of the water that is going to be injected here out of the reverse osmosis. And that is going to allow this device to indicate, and if necessary, to open this electric valve here. And then adjusting the flow with this adjustment valve, we can regulate and control in order to have on the outcome of the process. On the outcome of the process, we're going to have the mixing of the pure water with the water with a little bit of mineralization. And then in this, which is now empty at the moment, we are going to add here some a product that is called calcite, and that is basically to bring up some body, some natural way, to bring up some body and some minerals back into the water. Now, without having the control of the flow of the water that is going to feed the house tank, the treated water tank, we are going to dose via this dosing pump and a chlorine solution that is going to be in that tank, is going to dose the necessary quantity of chlorine in order to sterilize and maintain the water sterile. I'm just going to move this way here so that we are not having the influence of the light. And I'm going to have something just so that it doesn't look funny. Okay, just give me a sec. Okay, so I hope this way we are better off with the image. So I just want to be as best as possible at your service. So, resume. It's not complicated. It looks fancy. It looks complicated. A lot of valves, a lot of gadgets. Well, this is a little bit of out of the experience of the last more than 2 decades working with water and treating different types of water, that I came across some particularities on each one of the treatment. And that is why, in order for us to have a full control on what we are doing, then we have to have the facilities that will help us in order to install a system that can not only work now, but also be sustainable in its way. So that's what I wanted to bring to you. And instead of being in our normal office, in our regular office, we are here. So this live is for you to break up some of the questions that you may have. So if you have some questions, feel free to use the chat, and we can go through together. So there's one question here, and also just before I forget, this live is exclusively in English. So even if you are Portuguese and you are used to have like a double language when we do our lives on Instagram, here we are only using English. So even if you have a question in Portuguese, you can write it in the chat in Portuguese. I'll read it and then I'll explain it in English. Okay, so I hope you don't mind. I hope you comprehend. But as we are from Portugal, we are working in Portugal, but also into other places of the world. So we choose this model. So the question that we are receiving here is, what type of system does a house need to have potable water without relying on the main supply? That's a very good question. Without relying on the main supply. Now, first we need to understand if the house is connected with a mains water supply, the law says that you are obligated to be connected into the house and use only the mains water. Why is this important, and why is this a law? It's because the government or the institutions, they did all of the financial effort. They have to do the water controlling. Like here, we are doing all of these kind of controls only for one house. You can imagine that the municipalities and the companies that provide us mains water, city water, they also have to do all of the treatments that are necessary in order to bring us safe, quality, tested water into our homes. Now, we could then say, okay, but I've got my own water, I'll collect my water and blah, blah, blah. That would not be as efficient and also as responsible, also in another sense. And the other sense is not only the availability of probably having another water source, but the obligation of being connected with city water is also because of public health. Now, where does public health and public concern come to play? Well, in my opinion, it's like this. Imagine that I'm living in a house where I have, on one hand, I have city water, mains water that is treated and ready for usage to drink, and that is health controlled, so that it's not going to affect my health. On the other hand, I have another source of water that, even if I do all of the treatment, but imagine that the treatment or the water is not controlled at a certain moment, and by drinking that water, if the quality is not assured, imagine that I feel sick, or that imagine that somebody is visiting me and they are not in with their immune system perfectly up leveled, and that they can feel very ill. Then what do they have to do? They will have to go to the public hospital or a service in order to get well. Now, if we consider that we live in a democratic, socialized country where we all taxpayers pay for all of the services that we use, like a hospital, like an ambulance, now you can imagine that out of my stubbornness or uncontrolled usage of water that is not perfectly controlled, and if I need to go to a hospital, somebody will have to be paid to take care of my act. And that is the reason why, if why I'm bringing this subject even before answering the question. So if you are connected to mains treated, drinkable and potable water, that is the only water that the house can be served of. Okay, you can ask and you can tell, okay, but can I do something? Can I remove the chlorine out of the water? Can I have like a purifier for drinking? Yes, of course, that is all up to you. But when you are served at the entrance of your house with a water meter that is certified for drinking water, safe water, that is the water that exclusively can be used for the house. Let's get it straight. But when you don't have city water or mains water, then the question is, okay, how can I make my house functional? How can I make it so that I can rent out my house, that I can make an Airbnb, or that I can rent a house for vacations, holidays, whatever, or even for yourself? Then you have to contract and you have to install systems and devices, and you have to be self responsible for taking the necessary analysis of the water to validate and to certify that that water is proper for human consumption. So I hope I could answer the question that way. Just paraphrasing, just reading up the question again. What type of system does a house need to have potable water without relying on the main supply? Well, the type of system that a house needs in order to have potable water without relying on main supply is a system that is going to be adapted for the type of water that you are using. So that means, in this case here where we are, that the borehole is brackish, that the borehole has a very high level of dissolved salts in the water, so it needs to be demineralized, or the water has iron in the water, or the water has bacteria coming out of the ground. So all those treatments need to be taken and put in place in order to offer and to guarantee that the water is safe for consumption. Now, in this case here, they also are going to collect water from the irrigation supply, which is the open dam water that is canaled and lined up and piped up into the property. So that is even more vulnerable, because that water comes kilometers and kilometers away, and sometimes with an open source, an open canal. So anything that can contaminate that water can influence the quality of the water. So there is not a one answer that can say that system is adequate. No, each system needs to be validated accordingly, according to the water needs that you have. And that is our job. So here we are not only doing the consultancy, but we ended up also doing the installation of this system. Also, in order to have this opportunity to show to you that we are not only on the theoretically part of the systems, we are also very pleased and engaged on installing and implementing the solutions. Now, another question, and thank you for that question. Another question is it worth investing in this, even for those who have access to mains water, just to be prepared? If there's a failure in the public water supply, is this something you can implement quickly? That's a very good question, and indeed, we also have many situations where people ask us, indeed, to have a strategic water supply for in case of failure, in case of blackout, or in case of a blockage in the water supply. It can be for some situations where a storm, a hurricane has destroyed part of the facilities, you name it. Well, in those cases, what I recommend is that you look at what is your minimum required daily usage of water, and then think about having a strategic reserve of water for between 2 and 5 days maximum, so that that water can still stay fresh. And having like a buffer tank, and then helped with a booster pressure pump in order to supply your house, that could be a good opportunity. But don't forget that stagnant water in a holding tank, even if it's a drinkable or potable proper tank, the water sitting in there is going to lose some of the characteristics that make the water still stay safe. And with that, I'm talking about mainly the free chlorine. Free chlorine is actually the disinfectant that is still active in the water, and that level has a parameter. So there's a minimum and there's a maximum recommendable, and between that range we need to validate and certify that the water still maintains the bacteriological quality. That means that no germs of bacteria can start growing in there. And therefore, there's a subject that you can search for yourself. That is the Legionella, for instance, is one of the situations that can contaminate the water, and that happens with stagnation, with stagnant water for a long period of time, and also according to different fluctuations in temperature, for instance, pressure, temperature, Legionella can start developing. And if that's the case, be aware, be careful. And that's why it's so important to have any system that you will have. You have to think that there is no turnkey solution that, okay, I've got that system and I don't need to look at it or maintain it. No, that's not the case. Each system has its own particularity. That means that, like when you buy a car, you need to know what are the maintenance procedures, what are the things that you can test yourself before you do any drive, any journey, but also what are the things that you need to give in hands of a professional. So I don't believe that when you buy a car that you are going to change the oil and change the brakes and change the clutch yourself. I don't believe that. I believe that those are the things that you have to give it to a professional. But checking the pressure of your tires, checking the level of the oil and the water in the sprayers, that is something that is in your control. And having your own water system means that there are some things that you need to take self-control of. One of that is make and put an agenda that there are certified laboratories that can come to your place, take a sample of the water, analyze, test it, check it, so that you and your family and your guests are safe using the water that you have. Now, responding to the question, if it's reasonable to have a strategic water reserve and a water supply in case of failure of mains, yes, I would say yes. Especially if you have a business like a hotel, a restaurant, you name it, or accommodation, then it's not only advisable, I think it's necessary. Because imagine the following scenario: you are running a hotel and all of your guests are checking in and they are in your hotel, and then suddenly there's a break in the main supply because they need to do some pipe repair, and that's going to take a couple of hours or one day, or there's a big failure in the system. Then what are you going to do? Some clients may understand, others may say, you need to refund me and I need to go to another hotel where I can have a shower. That's one of the example. And the same goes to your private house. So thank you for that question. And answering, is it worth investing? Yes, it's always worth investing. Investing means that you are taking something out of you to put in a different purpose. Basically, it's just transponding or transpassing responsibility from one place to another. So investing your resources, your money, your space. You need some space in order to have a system that can do that. So you have to invest something for your commodity and your safety. But don't forget that it's not only putting a tank there, having the water stagnant there for months and months, and then when you need it, you are going to shower with that water. And if that water has developed, for instance, Legionella, and then I'm not even talking about drinking, but just inhaling when you are under the shower, look it up, because that's really scary. Legionella contamination. Thank you for that question. Wow, another question here is, if I wanted to move to an off-grid house right now, what would be the first step? Well, a very good answer, because we have many situations, many clients that buy properties off grids. It's like a dream, living in nature or close to nature, but that means also that you are not connected to main supply most of the times. So first step to do, well, in the previous question was about having a strategic water supply. Well, if you get a house off grid, what I would do as first, for starters, would be to install a water tank that can be supplied externally from the fire department or from a public company that can serve you, can sell to you and bring you fresh drinking water into that tank. And then you have your own pump system, probably your UV recirculation system, so that you avoid stagnation of the water and you guarantee the quality of the water. But like that, in the same day, you can order the water and start using the water even before you start harvesting rainwater or drill for a borehole or get any other source of water. So the question is, if you want to move to an off-grid house right now, what would be the first step? The first step is to get a proper water tank that is suitable for edible products, for drinking water. Get a professional to install you a pump system and a system that can assure that the water quality that you have bought is maintained. Okay, so that would be the first step. Thank you for that question. It's a very good and right to the point question, because that's I see that every day. Another question here is, does this work in all areas or does it depend on where we live? Well, I cannot answer that because I don't know all of the situations all around the world. But in the region where I mostly attend online, but also physically, is in Portugal, and especially in the south of Portugal, where you have places and houses that are far from the centers of the cities and of the towns. That means that sometimes the logistics to bring you fresh water can be, on the one hand, a little bit more difficult. That means also a little bit more expensive due to the transport costs. So you can imagine that. Imagine this house here, they also have a tank that we are now going to feed with this treated water. But beforehand, every time the tank got empty, they needed to refill the tank. Well, that means that they have to order the water, in this case from the fire department, because they are allowed to supply mains drinking water in their tanks, in their big tanks. So that means that the cost to refill a tank is, of course, according to the distance that the truck needs to do to get to your place and time that it involves. Why? Basically, because it's not only the cost, the financial cost of each cubic meter of water, but also all of the labor and the expenses and the petrol, the diesel that is needed to do the transport of that precious good called water that you are going to need to refill your tank. So being conscious with the way of dealing with that water in your own house is very precious, of course. So thank you for your question. And rephrasing, does this work in all areas? It depends. And what I would suggest to you is, if you are wanting to go living off grid and you find your beautiful spot, and that is the spot that you are searching for your whole life, nothing wrong with that. But check also on the facilities and how fast, how quick, and how easy is it for a competent company or institution to supply you with water. So thank you for that question. Another question is, does this work in apartments or only in houses? Well, if you live in an apartment, many apartments have in their own garage, in the commune area, they have water stock tanks. Sometimes they are only used in order to reboost the pressure uphill, because imagine that the water supply gets to your apartment on the ground level with, let's say, an average pressure of 3.0 bar. That means that the pressure 3.0 bar is just good enough to reach up to 30 meters, 30 meters of height. Well, that means a 7-stage apartment flat. So if you are living in a 7th-stage apartment, then if that apartment does not have a stock tank with a booster pump in order to bring up the pressure to the rest of the apartments that are higher than that, then for sure that if you open your tap, the pressure in your tap is very, very little. That means that sometimes you cannot even have a hot shower if the gas heater does not have enough pressure, incoming pressure. So the apartments are self-provided already with a buffer tank and a booster pump. Now, that tank deans not only to bring up the pressure, but if there is like a failure or a stop in the supply, then the quantity of water that is there still available can be used during the availability of the water in that tank. So yeah, that applies not only for standalone houses that are built off grid, but also in the urban areas. First, to bring up the pressure, but also sometimes also, like I said before, about the example of having a hotel and then not having water because the water supply is temporarily cut off. That's how we could do that. So that was the question: does this work in apartments or only in houses? I would say everywhere, because we need water for our survival. So if we need water for our survival, no matter if you are living off grid or in an urban area, think about what if. Okay, what if? And if you have your own water source, it's much easier to take that pressure out of your head. Now, another question is, if I collect rainwater, what must I do before drinking it to avoid any risk? What is the difference between filtering water and actually making it drinkable? That's a very good question. That's really a very good question. And I'm going to give you an example. If I'm going now out in the desert and I use one of those sails that the people in the desert do, creating like a delta shape in the sail with a bottom in with a hole in the middle, so that it collects and harvests the condensation of the night. So even in the desert, you can generate condensation water that you can consider as fresh water. But that is distilled water, like rainwater. Rainwater has no minerals. So if we just collect the water straight from the rain in a bucket and we say, wow, this is fantastic water, it is God-given or universe-given. But is that healthy for us? I would say not if you just drink it like that. If you don't add some minerals in it, if you don't add some parts, some particles that are essential not to dry out our cells from inside, then what you can create is basically a health issue, that you are getting very thirsty, and the more you drink, the more thirsty you get, because you are dehydrating from inside, because you are not building in with the essential minerals that our body needs. So when we think about the rain falling on the top of the mountain, and then it's cascading down the small rivers and the small stony passages, every time water passes through them, water is going to incorporate all of those minerals that are in our planet available for the water to take in. And that is what we do and what we are going to do right here. So we are basically measuring the conductivity and not allowing that conductivity to be very low, so that we can bring it into a certain level and then verify and certify that the essential minerals are rebalanced back into the water. So that is, in order to answer your question, is if you collect rainwater, what must you do before drinking? Well, first of all, you need to get something, or a measurement device, or a stick, or whatever, that can be possible for you to measure the total dissolved solids. That's the TDS of the water, or electroconductivity. It's a different range, a different measurement. And if you don't know, well, what did people do for millennia? Getting the rainwater and then getting a little bit apart, especially if you live near the ocean, you can put a little bit of a small quantity of seawater into rainwater, and then you have some of the essential minerals back into the water. That is like a very easy way of doing. So that is my advice to you. What is the difference between filtering and making it drinkable? Well, just to give you an example back here with this plan, so you can probably see. So filtering is basically having the water going, passing through any kind of filtration. Well, here this cartridge is going to filter up to 25 micron. That is the grade of filtration that this filter is going to do. We could even put it smaller. We could go and change this cartridge for one of 5 micron or even 1 micron. Okay, just to paraphrase here, what is a micron? Micron is a measurement unity. And if I take one normal human hair, the diameter of one human hair is 80 microns. And this will filter the water up to 25 microns. So it's about 1/4 of the size of the width of a human hair. So you can imagine that this is just going to filter sediments, okay? Sediments that are present in the water. But that does not mean that the water is drinkable. Why? Because we don't know, and we cannot filter with this. We cannot filter salts. We cannot filter ions. We cannot filter iron. Okay? We cannot filter calcium. So we cannot filter poison if there's chemicals or pesticides being thrown into the surface of the dam. So filtering is just basically like when you make coffee, that you put a paper filter in there, you put the coffee, the macerated coffee in there, and you pour hot water through. That is filtering. That means that it will extract the coffee out of the solid macerated coffee beans, but the solids stay and the liquid goes. That is filtering. Making it drinkable, it's a little bit more complex. We need to analyze. We need to know what's in the water before. That's why you see here this step. You see, so that we can take a sample of the water before going through the filter and analyze it, bring it to a certified laboratorium and do the chemical and the bacteriological analysis, analyze for heavy metals, pesticides, chemicals, and also natural elements like iron, manganese, calcium, salt, okay? So nitrates, sulfates. So those are all of the aspects that we need to take in consideration before saying that the water is drinkable. That is why when I said earlier that when you have to be self-reliable and self-responsible for your water quality for yourself, your family, your guests eventually, your clients eventually, then you are responsible for that water quality. So make sure that you get in contact with a company or a service company that can not only install but also maintain the systems and the quality of the water ready for you. Thank you for that question, for a very good question. Now, another question is, in terms of costs, are we talking about a very high investment? And after it's installed, is it a lot of work to maintain this system? Well, there is no one answer to that question, if a system is very expensive or less expensive, if the maintenance has a very high cost or a very low cost. Well, if we bring that back to what I was saying earlier, as if you have the availability of having mains water supply that has already taken care of all of those technical and financial aspects for you, and you pay a fraction of the cost of the treatment, which is the cost of the water by usage, then I would say go for the water that is already treated, okay? And then you don't need to do any extra concern. If you ask me how much can an installation like this cost, well, I can tell you that this is going, with all of the tanks and the pumps and everything, it can go up to more than 20,000 euros, for instance, just for this purpose. So If that is expensive or cheap, I don't know, because I don't have that answer. What I do know is that every time that the truck needs to come and bring you drinking water, it will, here in the Algarve, here in this reality, they will charge you around 200 euros for 10 cubic meters, for 10,000 liters. Now that means that, and if you would be connected to city water, the same 10 cubic meters nowadays would probably cost you 20 euros, about 2 euros a cubic meter, roughly. Okay, some places are a little bit more, some are a little bit less, but on average, it's about €2 per cubic meter. But if you have to buy it from a truck, it costs you 10 times more. Now, it depends on how much water you need for your daily usage, and if it's an investment that can pay itself back. How fast, how quick, depends on you, depends on the project, but also depends on what kind of treatment is necessary in order to have the water drinkable. Many other projects, borehole, and the water that comes out is already clean. There's no heavy metals, no minerals in excess in the water, so the water can be just basically bacteriologically treated and served for the house. And then the investment, we're talking about probably a couple of €1,000, not in this scenario. So, but thank you for that question, and it's a very good question regarding the maintenance of a system like this. Well, I believe that there is no system that can operate fully on its own without either the owner and an external element to be taking care of the equipment. Like the example I've given about the car, you cannot expect that you buy a car today and after 20 years of driving that car, that the only thing you need to do is just put fuel in. There are more things that you need to do. You need to change the tires, change the oil. You need to do some maintenance. And the same goes to a technical installation. As you could see here, there are some products that we need to refill. So like the anti-scale and the chlorine and the cartridge needs to be changed. So not only the system has to run by itself, but there are some operations, some maintenance operations that need to be taken into account. That can be done if the client or the manager of the house is properly instructed. There are some things that they can do themselves. There are other things that they need to outsource. Okay, and that is something that we always guide also in order to guide the clients, guide you with what are the average maintenance costs, so that not only the investment is important to know, but also the running costs. Okay, so that's my answer to you. So thank you for that question, and it was really a nice question. I hope it made sense for you. Another question here is, wow, today we're being bombarded here with questions, and that's why we open the office for you, so that we can give you some ready to go answers to some common questions. And if you need any particular advice, then you can send us a mail, you can send us a message, and you can contact us. We can make an appointment and see how we can serve you, or do a one-on-one consulting service for you for your project in order to guide you the best way possible. Now, the other question is, how often do I need to change the filters or perform maintenance? Well, that depends on, first, what are the needs of the water, and second, what is the volume of the water that you are using every day. Give you an example. Here in this prototype, in this installation here, you can see that we installed always a pressure meter before the filter and one pressure meter after the filter, and we have one sample tap before the filter and one sample tap after the filter. Why is this important? That is basically to answer your question in a very direct way. There is no certified answer to say that this cartridge here that is 25 microns, for instance, needs to be changed every day, every week, every month, every year. I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is because if this is a filter, this is going to filter. And the purpose of a filter is to retain all of the elements that we don't want to pass through. So everything that is bigger than 25 micron will stay behind. Now, knowing that means that if we have here 20,000 liters of water going through, but the water is cloudy and there are sediments in it, it's going to clog very fast. When the filter clogs, means that the filter is creating resistance in the water. The resistance means that the pressure here will be higher than there. And when the difference in pressure is more than 0.5 up to a maximum of 1.0 bar difference when the water is flowing, means that the filter here is blocking the passage of water. And what is a blockage? Is sediments, dirt, that is obstructing the water canal. Think about a river. When you wash a small creek, a small river going down, and if there's nothing in the way of the water, then the water is flowing smoothly. But what happens when you put some stones in the passage of water? It's going to build up, correct? So it's going to create resistance. So the water upstream is going to create more level, more pressure into those stones that are blocking the passage of the water. And that pressure, that difference, is what we read here, and we take that as an example, as a reading measurement. And so what we normally recommend to the client is every time that the pressure difference is bigger than 0.5, then the cartridge needs to be changed. The filter needs to be changed. Okay, so there's no answer to it. It depends on the quality of the water that comes in and how much water is passing. Regarding the rest of the maintenance, well, there are some things that need to be attended on a regular basis. Okay, so imagine that the pressure difference is not yet to the point that the cartridge needs to be changed. In that case, then there's a time. And why is this important? Because as you can see, this is transparent, correct? Now, if this is transparent, means that the water inside can start creating and developing some green color, some algae. Well, that is also not very good. So we need to prevent that. And in order to prevent that, means that every 6 months, even if the pressure drop is not sufficient, imagine that the water is coming clean and the filter is just out of precaution there, but there's no debris, there's no sediments, so the filter is allowing the water to pass without creating a blockage. The recommendation is every 6 months the cartridge needs to be changed and the filter house needs to be cleaned in order to avoid the growth of algae, in this case, of other bacteria. Just to give you an example on that is, imagine what happens if you don't brush your teeth every day. You'll get some bacteria film around your teeth, correct? Well, where does those bacteria come from? They are also present everywhere, even in the air that we are breathing. So inside here, some bacteria, some microorganisms can start developing. So even if it's not blocking, it needs to be changed, minimum every 6 months. So thank you for that question. Another question is there any way to test at home if the water is truly safe? Well, there are some tests, there are some kits that you can have in order to validate if the water is um, um, safe for usage if you use those devices in combination with a laboratory test. Why? If we have like a chlorine tester, like a pocket tester, that we can analyze the free chlorine of the water, that is an easy test to do. If we do that and we see that the range of the free chlorine is in the parameters that are required for safe drinking water, which is higher than 0.25 milligram per liter and lower than 0.65 milligram per liter, if the free chlorine level is in that range, and that anyone can test it. You can get the tester, you can get online a free chlorine tester, and you do the test. Okay, so that is on the bacteriological level, meaning that if there is free chlorine available in your water, in your tap, it's a better guarantee that the water is bacteriologically safe for consumption. That is one point. Another one is having a salinity or a total dissolved solids tester that you can test and read out what is the mineralization of the water. The same happens when you go to the supermarket and you buy bottled water, and if you look carefully on the label of the bottle, you'll read out total mineralization. So you have lots of parameters from pH, from minerals, from ions, whatever, but also you have one that says total minerals or dry residue. Comes a little bit more or less to the same. So if you read it out and then you choose from your very big list of waters that are available for you to buy, you choose what is the best water for you, then you can also get your pocket or your tester, and it operates like a small simple device that you just put in your glass of water, and you read out how much is the total mineralization. Well, that can give you a good perspective on the quality of the water. So thank you for your question. But to answer, if to know if the water is truly safe, and the word truly means that you have to validate it. You have to go further and you have to get it certified by some company or laboratory that can do all of the tests that can validate if that water is truly safe. So some things you can test yourself, other things you have to outsource. Okay, thank you for that question. Another question is it possible to automate the entire process? Yes, always. Like everything in life, everything can be automated. And even now, today, we use technology, we use tools. Well, I can show you something while I'm answering you. So but there's a line between what is the investment and what is the automation of a process. So we have in our range of equipment, we also have some systems and the possibility of monitoring and controlling all of the aspects of a system. So I hope I can. Oh, sorry. I hope I can show it to you as I'm speaking, and I can show you. For instance, this is a diagram of a system. I hope it's visible. Let's just see if the webcam can. Yes. Okay, now I can see. So as you can see, this is a system that remotely controls the levels of the tanks and the water system. And this is in the graphic, but we also can show it in the charts by having all of the data for a system like that, to have everything controlled remotely. Just see if it's not easy. Okay, I hope. Well, answering to you is yes, we can have everything automated. For instance, what I was just saying about the free chlorine, there are devices that do a recirculation of the system. We have shown you in some reels, so if you search for information on our canal, you'll find that. So there are systems that can control the pH automatically, the free chlorine automatically, systems that can measure the conductivity automatically. Like here we are going to self-regulate, and the system will be autonomous in the sense that it's going to do the proper mix of the purified water by the reverse osmosis with the unpurified water in a certain range, so that the mineralization is optimized. So there are ways of fully get the system automized. It depends on the investment that we want to put in. So there is a line between zero automation and investment. And if I do a diagram that I learned in school, is like this. So the cost is proportional inverted to the automation. So the more automation, the more automation, I hope you can see it. So when we the more automation, the higher it is on the investment, but on the long term, it means also being hands-free. So that means that you don't need to outsource that much. So it's a matter of investment, and it's a matter of choice, of course, but it is possible. So if you want to have every day one person checking your system, or having a system that can survey, and if there's any alarm that you can be informed, or the maintenance company, that is something that we recommend to have in all of the installations. It's a system that can inform, so that it can run by itself, and if there's a minimum intervention needed, that the one that is responsible can attend remotely to see if it's like a low emergency, medium emergency, or an acute emergency situation that needs to be attended. So thank you for that question. So I hope that that the answers to the questions that have been presented are useful for you. And like I said, our job is to make your system possible, suitable, and affordable, but also practical, in the sense that you can take the most benefit out of your own system. That's our purpose. That's our goal. Now, another question is, what is the most common mistake people make when trying to treat their water on their own? I don't know. I don't know what is the most common mistake. What I normally see, and that is what I've been watching in the past, is that out of lack of knowledge, people are not well informed about some of the particularities of their water needs and the water quality that they have. And because they are not so aware, they contract or subcontract a main contractor, a construction company, or another company, where their expertise is not on water treatment. And then, of course, anyone can install a pump and a tank and a filter, but knowing what is really needed, therefore, I believe that you need a specialist. In the same way that when you have a tooth pain, you don't go to a carpenter to fix it. You search for a dentist. And even in the range of dentists, normally what people do is they get advice even before making an appointment with their friends, with their neighbors, to ask, are you satisfied with your dentist? So that you can get a little bit of more information, more reliability on that concern before you even make an appointment. So the mistakes, I would not call it a mistake. I would call lack of knowledge, and perhaps yeah a lack of investment in the know-how. So if you don't have the know-how, and if your contractor, your builder does not have that know-how, search for anyone that can guide you and give you a little bit of some knowledge in order for you to obtain some know-how on how to proceed. So that's my advice. So it's not blaming that a common mistake. There are no mistakes. Everything that happens for us in life is for a reason. And so either we learn or we win. We never lose. So there are no mistakes in life. Everything is in the right place, in the right order, at the right time. That's what I've been learning in this last 51 years of life in this experience. So thank you for that question. Um, and there's another question: is there any source of water that is naturally potable? Is tap water always safe, or and do people trust tap water too much? Well, I trust tap water because I know, as a technician, as an expert on water quality, I'm always interested in knowing how each country, how each village, how each city does their own water treatment. So I'm curious because it's my nature being curious. So I ask questions, and when I don't know or when I don't get the answers, I go further, I go deeper, and if necessary, I send an email and I ask for the water quality analysis of the daily analysis that the city has to provide their citizens. So to answer is the can people trust on tap water? Yes, they can trust on tap water because there's no other way, and all of the range of validation, quality standards and procedures, safety procedures that they all have to do and fulfill, and the arbitrary survey that they are obligated to present and to validate. So I have absolutely no doubt on that. So I hope that that part is clear. The first part of the question is there any source of water that is naturally potable? Yes, of course there is. Otherwise, we as humans would not survive if before the usage of filters, chlorine, reverse osmosis, softening processes were not available. So you can imagine that for thousands of years, animals, we as human beings as well, we just drank straight out the wells, the springs, the natural springs. There are natural sources of water, springs that are, there are creeks in nature that if you go there and you just catch some water, and wow, of course. And thank God that we live in a planet that is still so beautiful, so green and so blue. And that means that, of course, we live here in a place that we can identify where we have beautiful natural sources of water that are immediately drinkable. Of course, if we add chlorine or we add other chemicals, but before the development of these technologies, how did we survive? How did we grow as humans and as societies? Well, I gave you an example that in Venice they collected rainwater, but they did something with the way of collecting, the way of accommodating, filtering, protecting, and having that. So basically, it's applying the knowledge and the know-how that they have been creating. But yes, there are many, many, many places where you can just go out in the nature. You can roll in nature, drink straight from natural springs, and that's so beautiful. So thank you for that question. There's another question here: is it's often said that bottled water is collected from springs and boiled before being sold. What exactly does boiling water do? Well, I don't know about that, but boiling, well, My grandmother used to take water um, from the well, and in order to do the bacteriological treatment, she did something that I even now I recall that, and as I'm speaking, I'm getting goose bumps, because it was so good. Every time I went in her kitchen, and she had a clay jar, a big clay jar covered with something on top so that the aerobic germs would not go inside. And she filled up that clay jar, naturally clay, not glassed clay, no, just naturally clay, just cooked clay. And she used to boil the water from the well. She boiled in a big pot. And when the water was still hot, she poured inside that clay jar, and the water stayed there. And it could stay there for weeks. And that was the water that she used to cook, to make soup, to drink. And every time when I came from school and I passed through her house, my grandmother Carolina, thank God that she was living in this planet, and that she made such beautiful memories, and provided also in a certain way for my existence. And I can even taste at this very moment, after more than 40 years, that I can even sense the taste of that water that was previously boiled and then stocked in that clay jar. So I don't know if companies are boiling the water. I don't think so, or I'm not certain if they do so, because boiling water costs a lot on energy, because you have to understand that you have to raise the temperature up to 100 degrees Celsius, and the energy costs, especially nowadays with all of these energy crisis. So the energy costs to uplift the temperature of the water in order to eliminate any bacteria and germs that can be inside the water. Um, I don't know if that is a one way that some companies of bottled water use. What I do know is that some other companies, they do a different procedure in order to treat the water bacteriologically. And the way that they have to do that is, even if it's spring water, bacteriologically free, you name it. But once you put the water in a bottle, you have to certify that there's nothing organic that is going to start growing inside the bottle. Like I explained to you before, the need of cleaning and rinsing this filter and also the filter house is because there's going to be bacteriological activity. Microscopic bacteria are going to start growing there. So how do they do to prevent that, and that we can buy a bottle, plastic or even glass bottle, and make sure that the water is still safe after months and months of being stocked in there, is because they have to um, treat and do some kind of treatment, whether it's pasteurization, boiling, as you were asking, I'm not sure, or pressure, for instance. There are pressure chambers, and pressure, with more than 80 bar pressure, they put inside like a, a cage, let's call it a cage, where then the pressure is increased, and then for a couple of moments, all of the microorganisms that could eventually be inside the bottled and sealed bottle will be annihilated and will be destroyed, killed. So that is one of the techniques that I know that some companies use in order to maintain the quality and the safety of the water. So thank you for that question. I hope I'm not vaguing out a little bit on the answer that you probably wanted to get clarified, but I would investigate. If I were you, I would investigate. But the one thing I'm a little bit suspicious about, not being very comfortable with the way of boiling in the water, is because of the costs, the energy cost that is required to boil water. Another question is, how do I know which system is right for me? Consult us. Very simple. So that is why we open this office for you, and that is why we do these lives for you. It's not just to be with a beautiful face in this screen. No, the reason why we do these lives is indeed to get you with the knowledge or the limited knowledge that we have acquired, with some experience and some learning and some practice, is in order to guide you. So we are here to guide you and to help you. So if you have a special need for a certain system and you don't know what you want or what could be applied or best applied for you, our work is to be your consultant and to guide you and to say, okay, do a water test. We can refer you to a laboratory in your neighborhood. Get your water fully tested. Once you have the water results, we can together analyze those results and then see, okay, it's like making a cake. You just get the recipe and you get the ingredients, and then you need to know how to apply those ingredients according to the recipe that is needed in order for you to bake that cake. So we can bake the cake for you, but you can bake your cake, or you can get your cake baked, as long as you know what are the ingredients, what is the recipe, and how to do it. That is what we do. Thank you for your question. And another question is, what was the most challenging case you've ever seen? Well, every case is a challenge, because I'm like a curious tailor that, even though he knows his client for all his life long, every time the client enters the tailor's shop, he needs to take all of the measurements as if it would be the first time that he's doing the suit for that client, for that customer. And why? Well, you can figure out why. Imagine that I'm a tailor and I've been making costumes for that particular client ever since he was an adult. And for the last 30 years of his life, every time he needed a new suit, he came to me for me to make a new suit for him. So, of course, I have measured him many, many, many times through the last 30 years in this example. But the question is his body the same size today as it was yesterday, or 1 month ago, or 1 year ago? Probably not. So imagine that he put some weight or he went into the gym. So it means that even if the tailor would say, I've got here all of your notes, I know your measurements by heart, you don't even need to come here, I can already start making you your suit. Is there a challenge in there? There is no challenge in there. So for me, there is no big challenge or small challenge. Even a client that says, I want to get purified water in my kitchen so that I can make my coffee, my tea, or I can drink with the most sublime water. And that's sometimes basically just a small purifier or a small filter, or a complexer system here that we have to analyze and take in consideration the mineralization, the ions, the salt, whatever. Every project is a challenge because it starts with the same letters, the C, the H, and the A, which is the chance to do something different for you. That is the biggest challenge. So the biggest challenge for me is to provide you with the answer and the solution that will fit into your expectations and inside the budget that you want to invest. That's my challenge. So Thank you. So if there are no other questions, I want to thank you for being in this more than 1 hour live. And it's a beautiful saying. And there's a beautiful speaker and author that always refers time as being irreal, because sometimes 1 hour feels like 5 minutes, and sometimes 5 minutes feel like an hour. And in the last 1 hour and 25 minutes, it seemed to me as if it was like 5 minutes. So thank you, Wayne Dyer, that I respect and that I really like to get his teachings from and read from him. So I want to invite you for next week. Yes, next week, Thursday, 1700 hours. We are going to be live on Instagram, approaching in Portuguese and in English a different subject. So let's see what next week is going to bring us. And I wish you a very, very, very great day. And I want to thank you. And I want to thank you for being there, for being conscious, for being curious, and to accept the challenge of your life, which is be better today than what you were yesterday. Thank you.